The cargo bay smelled like recycled air and machine oil. Kang Doyen sat in his pilot chair, feet propped up on the console, eating noodles from a container that claimed to be beef-flavored but tasted like cardboard. His ship, the Morning Star, was 3 days into a routine supply run to the mining colonies near the Vale Nebula. Nothing exciting ever happened on these runs, which was exactly how Doyen liked it. Then the voice started. It wasn't a voice exactly, more like a feeling that had words attached to it. It came from everywhere and nowhere, pressing against the inside of his skull like someone was trying to speak directly into his brain. Doyen dropped his noodles. The container bounced off the floor, spilling brown sauce across his boots. The worthy shall ascend. The temple calls. Come and prove yourself. Doyen wiped sauce off his pants and checked his medical scanner. No brain tumors. No psychotic breaks. The ship's computer showed nothing unusual. But the voice kept repeating, patient and insistent like a song he couldn't get out of his head. He pulled up the navigation charts. The feeling seemed to have a direction, pulling him toward a specific point in the Vale Nebula. Doyen had heard stories about that place. Old stories. Scary stories. Stories about a temple that floated in space and ate anyone stupid enough to go looking for it. This is a bad idea, Doyen said to himself. Then he changed course anyway. 3 hours later, his communication system exploded with activity. Every frequency was jammed with traffic. Ships from across the galaxy were all heading to the same destination. The temple had called, and apparently Doyen wasn't the only one who heard it. A Velraxi cruiser appeared on his sensors, its crystalline hull reflecting starlight like a massive diamond. Those ships cost more than Doyen would make in 100 lifetimes. A message came through in perfectly synthesized human speech. Human vessel, state your purpose. Doyen thought about lying, but what was the point? Same as yours, probably. Got a voice in my head telling me to go to some temple. There was a long pause. Then a curious. The temple has not called humans before. Your species lacks the necessary achievements. This must be an error. The communication cut off before Doyen could respond. He wasn't sure if he should feel insulted or relieved. More ships appeared as he got closer. A Than collective bioship that looked like a massive jellyfish made of metal. A Korval warship bristling with weapons painted in the red and gold of their warrior clans. Dozens of others from species Doyen had never even seen before. They all ignored his little cargo hauler. A new communication came through. This one on a human frequency. A woman's face appeared on his screen. Young and sharp-eyed, with short black hair and about 5 different data screens reflected in her glasses. Is this the Morning Star? Kang Doyun? Depends on who's asking. Yun Hana. I'm with the Xenoanthropology Institute. I've been tracking temple-related phenomena for 6 years. I need to talk to you about what you're doing. Doyen gestured at his view screen where the temple was now visible in the distance, apparently going to my death. You want to give me reasons not to? Hana's expression was serious. The temple has been calling species for thousands of years. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations have answered. None of them have ever come back. We have fragments of transmissions, partial records. Every species interprets the call differently, but they all agree on one thing. The temple judges worthiness, and everyone fails. So why are all these ships here? Because everyone thinks their species will be different. The Velraxi believe their perfect logic will succeed. The Than trust their collective consciousness. The Korval rely on their warrior traditions. They all think they understand what worthy means. Doyen looked at the temple growing larger in his view screen. It was massive, carved from a single piece of something that looked like stone but moved like liquid. Patterns shifted across its surface, showing images of creatures he didn't recognize, all bowing or kneeling or doing whatever their anatomy allowed that looked like submission. What do you think it means? Doyen asked. I think it's a trap. Every species sends their best and brightest. They're champions. They're paragons. And the temple takes them all. Then why am I here? I'm a cargo hauler. I barely finished technical school. I'm nobody's idea of humanity's champion. Hana was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's the point. What if the temple doesn't want champions? What if it wants something else? Before Doyen could answer, the temple's presence pressed into his mind again, stronger this time. He could feel it looking at him, measuring him, weighing something he didn't understand. Every ship in the fleet was approaching the entrance, a massive archway that seemed to open onto nothing. The Velraxi cruiser went first, its crystalline structure glowing with power. The Than bioship followed, its organic hull pulsing with coordinated thought. The Korval warship entered with weapons ready, treating the temple like an enemy to conquer. Others followed one by one, their ships representing the pinnacle of their civilization's achievements. Doyen's hands hovered over his controls. He could turn back. He should turn back. This was insane. He was nobody. He had no business being here with all these advanced species and their perfect representatives. Doyen, Hana's voice cut through his doubts. If you go in there, I need you to keep your communication link open. I'll monitor everything from out here. Maybe if we work together, we can figure out what the temple actually wants. You really think a cargo hauler and a researcher can solve a mystery that stumped entire civilizations? I think everyone else is so busy trying to prove they're worthy that they forgot to ask what worthy means. Maybe we can ask the questions they're too proud to consider. Doyen thought about his little ship and his little life. He thought about the voice in his head that wouldn't stop calling. He thought about all those species sending their champions while humanity sent a guy who hauled canned goods for a living. Maybe Hana was right. Maybe that was the point. Okay, Doyen said. I'm going in. Keep the channel open, and if I don't come back, tell my brother he can have my ship. You're not going to die. You don't know that. No, Hana admitted, but I have a feeling about you. Doyen guided the Morning Star toward the temple entrance. The archway grew larger until it filled his entire view screen. The stone that wasn't stone rippled around him as he passed through. For a moment, everything went dark. Then light returned and he was inside. The chamber was vast beyond comprehension, its walls stretching up into infinity. The other ships were already there, arranged in a circle around a central platform. On that platform stood representatives from each species. The Velraxi had sent a crystalline being that sparkled with computational power. The Than had manifested as a merged consciousness of 5 bodies moving as one. The Korval warrior stood in full battle armor, a sword in each hand. They all looked at Doyen as he climbed out of his ship in his stained cargo pants and oil-marked jacket. He could feel their contempt, their confusion, their certainty that he didn't belong. The temple's voice filled the chamber, speaking in a way that every species heard in their own language. You have come to prove your worth. Each of you represents the peak of your kind. Show me why you deserve to ascend. The trials were about to begin. The first chamber opened like a flower made of stone. The Velraxi representative moved forward without hesitation, its crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns across the walls. The other candidates watched from the main hall as the trial began. Doyen couldn't see everything clearly, but Hana's voice in his ear helped fill in the gaps. She had hacked into some kind of observation feed, or maybe the temple wanted everyone to watch. Either way, he could see the Velraxi standing before a pedestal, where symbols made of pure light floated and shifted. What is the sum of all knowledge? The temple asked. The Velraxi didn't hesitate. Its body began to glow, processing power ramping up to levels that made Doyen's sensors scream warnings. For 3 days, the crystalline being calculated, Doyen watched in shifts, sleeping when he had to, eating ration bars that tasted like plastic. The Velraxi never stopped, never slowed, just pure computation running at the speed of light. On the 3rd day, the Velraxi spoke. The answer was an equation so complex that Doyen's translator just gave up and displayed error messages. It had something to do with universal constants, quantum probabilities, and the mathematical structure of reality itself. Even Hana went quiet trying to process it. Correct, the temple said. The Velraxi's body brightened with what might have been pride. Incomplete, the brightness flickered. Insufficient. The Velraxi began to break apart. Not violently, not painfully, just a gentle dissolution. Its crystalline structure became light, and that light flowed into the walls of the temple. In seconds, there was nothing left but a faint glow where the representative had stood. The entrance to the first chamber closed. Nobody spoke. The other candidates looked at each other with expressions that Doyen couldn't read, but he recognized the emotion behind them. Fear. The Velraxi gave the right answer, Hana whispered over the communication link. But the temple said it wasn't enough. What does that mean? Doyen had no answer. He was too busy trying not to think about what he'd just seen. The second chamber opened. The Than collective moved as one, 5 bodies with a single mind. They flowed into the chamber like water, their movements perfectly synchronized. Doyen had never seen anything like it. Each body knew exactly what the others would do before they did it. No communication, no delays, just perfect unity. The temple's challenge appeared as a web of light hanging in the air. Connections between points, patterns within patterns, complexity beyond anything Doyen could understand. "Show me perfect harmony," the temple demanded. The Than merged deeper. Doyen could see it happening even though he didn't understand how. The 5 bodies moved closer, their thoughts blending until there was no separation at all. They became a single consciousness wearing 5 forms. The light web responded, shifting to match their unified mind. Every connection aligned. Every pattern resonated. The chamber filled with a sound like reality singing in tune with itself. "Perfect," the temple acknowledged. The Than's merged consciousness pulsed with satisfaction, unchanging. The pulse hesitated, lifeless. The 5 bodies froze mid-motion. Their skin took on a crystalline quality, like they were turning to glass, or ice or thought made solid. They stood there, perfectly preserved, perfectly harmonious, perfectly dead. The temple absorbed them too, but differently this time. They didn't dissolve into light. They just became part of the architecture, statues to memorialize their perfect moment. Doyen felt sick. They succeeded. They did exactly what it asked. And it killed them anyway. Hana said quietly, "The temple doesn't want success. It wants something else." The 3rd chamber opened before anyone was ready. The Korval warrior stepped forward, both swords drawn. His armor was ceremonial but functional, covered in marks that Doyen guessed were battle honors. This one didn't look scared. He looked eager. The chamber transformed into an arena. Opponents appeared, holographic or real. Doyen couldn't tell. The warrior fought them all. For 6 days he battled, facing enemies of increasing skill and power. Doyen watched when he could, amazed by the warrior's technique. Every movement was precise. Every strike was measured. The Korval never wasted energy, never made mistakes, never showed weakness. On the 6th day, after defeating hundreds of opponents, the warrior stood alone in the arena, breathing hard but victorious. "One opponent remains," the temple announced. A new figure appeared. It wore the same armor, held the same swords, moved with the same technique. The warrior was facing himself. "That's not fair," Doyen muttered. "Since when does the temple care about fair?" Hana replied. The battle was incredible and terrible. The warrior fought his duplicate with everything he had. They were perfectly matched. Every attack countered, every defense penetrated. They fought for hours. Finally, the warrior saw an opening. He took it, driving his blade through his duplicate's chest in a killing strike. The duplicate dissolved. The warrior stood victorious, sword still extended. "Victory through self-destruction," the temple said. "Paradox. Failure." The warrior opened his mouth to argue, but he was already disappearing. Not dissolving, not freezing, just vanishing. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't. Only his swords remained, falling to the ground with a clang that echoed through all the chambers. Doyen looked around at the remaining candidates. More than half were gone now. Those who remained looked at each other with new understanding. This wasn't a test they could pass. This was a trap they could only spring. One by one, the chambers opened. One by one, candidates entered. One by one, they failed in different ways. A species that showed perfect courage was judged too reckless. A species that demonstrated ultimate wisdom was deemed too static. A species that achieved pure enlightenment was found lacking in growth. The temple took them all. Finally, only Doyen remained. He stood in the main hall, surrounded by empty spaces where ships had been. The chambers were all closed now. The temple was silent. Doyen waited, his heart hammering in his chest, wondering what impossible task it would give him. "Human." Doyen jumped at the voice. It wasn't the booming pronouncement the temple had used for everyone else. This was quieter, almost curious. "Your species sent no champion. No supreme intellect. No perfect warrior. No enlightened sage. They sent you Kang Doyen, hauler of cargo and eater of terrible noodles. Why are you here?" Doyen thought about the right answer. The smart answer. The answer that might let him survive. Then he decided to hell with it. If everyone else died trying to impress this thing, maybe honesty was worth a shot. "Because you called and I was curious. I wanted to know what worthy means to you." Silence. Long, heavy silence that made Doyen wonder if he'd already failed, and just hadn't dissolved yet. Then the temple laughed. It was a sound like reality tearing at the seams, like the universe suddenly remembering a joke it had forgotten. It wasn't comforting. It made Doyen's bones ache and his teeth hurt. but it was genuine. Curious, the temple repeated. Define curious, human. It means wanting to know things even when knowing them might be dangerous. It means asking questions nobody else is asking. It means, Doyen paused, trying to find words. It means not being satisfied with the answers everyone else accepts. And you are curious about worthiness? Yeah, because everyone you called thought they knew what it meant. The Velraxi thought it meant knowing everything. The Than thought it meant perfect harmony. The Korval thought it meant never losing. They were all wrong. So either worthiness means something none of them understood, or maybe the question itself is wrong. Another silence. This one felt different. Heavier. You are the first, the temple said, in 10 million years to suggest my question might be flawed. Proceed to the next chamber, Kang Doyen. Let us discuss worthiness. A new entrance opened, one that hadn't existed before. Doyen, Hana's voice was tight with fear. The energy readings are off the scale. Whatever this is, it's not like the other trials. I know, Doyen said. He started walking toward the entrance. But I think that's the point. The chamber beyond was different from the others. There were no pedestals, no arenas, no tests of obvious skill. Just an empty space that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. Doyen walked forward, his boots making no sound on the floor that might not have been a floor at all. The temple's presence surrounded him, thick and heavy like trying to breathe underwater. But instead of water, it was attention. The feeling of being watched by something so vast that his brain couldn't quite process it. You question my premise, the temple said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, no longer trying to sound grand or intimidating. Just curious the same way Doyen was curious. This is unprecedented, elaborate. Doyen took a breath. His mouth was dry. He wished he had brought water or maybe something stronger. The Velraxi gave you the sum of all knowledge, right? They calculated everything, put it all into one perfect equation. Correct. But you said it was incomplete and insufficient. Why? The temple was quiet for a moment. Doyen could feel it thinking, which was a weird sensation he didn't entirely enjoy. Like standing next to a nuclear reactor and feeling the heat through the walls. Knowledge without ignorance has no purpose, the temple finally said. If all is known, nothing remains to be discovered. The equation was perfect and therefore useless. Growth requires unknown variables. Doyen nodded slowly. Okay. So the Velraxi failed because they achieved their goal too completely. What about the Than? They demonstrated perfect harmony. And you called it lifeless. Because harmony without discord is just, what, stagnation? Conflict drives evolution, the temple agreed. Change requires disagreement. Unity without diversity is death dressed in peaceful clothing. The Than achieved their ideal and thus ended their capacity for growth. Doyen was starting to see a pattern, and he didn't like where it was going. The Korval warrior. He won every fight. He was perfect at combat. Victory without the possibility of defeat is meaningless. Achievement requires risk. The warrior could not lose, and therefore his victories held no value. He destroyed himself to prove his strength, demonstrating that his strength had no purpose beyond self-destruction. So they all succeeded at what they thought worthiness meant. And that's exactly why they failed. Yes. Doyen ran his hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it. Back on his ship, Hana was probably recording every word of this. He hoped someone would be able to learn something useful from it, because he felt like he was walking through a minefield while blindfolded. Then what is worthiness? What do you actually want? The temple's presence shifted, and suddenly Doyen could see things he hadn't noticed before. The walls became transparent, revealing vast spaces beyond them. Chambers upon chambers, halls upon halls, all filled with things, beings, preserved in light or crystal or states of existence Doyen had no words for. I show you my collection, the temple said. 10 million years of gathering, thousands of species, millions of individuals, each one perfect in their own way. The greatest warriors, the wisest philosophers, the most brilliant scientists, the most enlightened spiritual leaders, all preserved at the peak of their potential. Doyen walked closer to the transparent walls. He could see them more clearly now. A crystalline being similar to the Velraxi representative, but larger, more complex. Emerged consciousness like the Than, but comprising hundreds of bodies instead of 5. Warriors in armor from civilizations that no longer existed. Scholars with knowledge of sciences humanity hadn't discovered yet. They were all frozen. Perfect. Unchanging. Dead in every way that mattered. You collect them, Doyen said slowly. You take the best of each species and preserve them. I am a curator. That is my function. I locate apex specimens and maintain them in perpetuity. I save them from entropy, from decay, from the inevitable decline that follows any peak achievement. Doyen felt cold despite the chamber having no temperature. You're not testing for worthiness. You're hunting for it, you call out. Species send their champions and you collect the ones who prove they've reached their maximum potential. Correct, and then I preserve them before time can degrade their perfection. It is an act of mercy. A gift. It's a grave, Doyen said. You're not saving them. You're killing them and putting them in a museum. The temple's presence pulled back slightly as if surprised. They achieved their species' ultimate potential. What greater accomplishment exists? What higher purpose than to serve as an eternal example of what their kind could become? But they can't become anything anymore. You froze them. They're not people or beings or whatever they were. They're exhibits. And what happened to their species after you took their champions? The temple didn't answer immediately. When it did, its voice was quieter. Most achieved their collective apex shortly after, then declined. Many are now extinct. This is the natural order. Species rise, peak, and fall. I preserve the peaks before they are lost to time. Doyen wanted to punch something, but there was nothing solid to punch. You don't see it, do you? You're not preserving their peaks. You're causing their decline. You take their best and brightest, the ones who could help their species adapt and grow and change. Without them, of course, they stagnate and die. The specimens I collect have already reached maximum potential. They cannot grow further. Their collection or release makes no difference to their species' trajectory. That's where you're wrong. Doyen turned to face the center of the chamber, where he felt the temple's attention was strongest. You're thinking of species like their products with expiration dates. They reach their peak performance and that's it. Nowhere left to go. But what if that's not how it works? What if potential isn't a destination? Explain. Doyen thought about his own species, humanity. They were so far behind the other races in the galaxy. No crystal technology, no hive minds, no warrior traditions that spanned millennia. Just humans stumbling around making mistakes, trying to figure things out. The Velraxi representative knew everything knowable, right? So there was nothing left for them to learn. The Than achieved perfect harmony, so they had no reason to change. The Korval warrior couldn't lose, so he had no way to improve. They all reached endpoints. They were done. Yes, perfect, ready for preservation. But humans aren't like that. We learn something, then immediately wonder what else we don't know. We achieve something, then ask what else we can achieve. We win something, then look for bigger challenges. We're never done because we're never satisfied with being done. The temple was silent for a long time. Doyen could feel it processing this, turning the concept over like examining a strange artifact. You suggest that humanity's worthiness lies in your perpetual incompleteness? I suggest that worthiness isn't about being perfect. It's about being capable of becoming more than you are. Every species you collected stopped growing. They reached their version of perfect and had nowhere else to go. That's not a peak. That's a plateau. That's death and humanity. Doyen laughed, but it came out shaky. We're a mess. We're centuries behind most galactic species technologically. We argue with each other constantly. We make terrible decisions and have to learn from our mistakes. We're probably nobody's definition of an apex species, but we're still climbing, still growing, still trying to become better than we are. You admit to being inferior to other species. Yeah, right now, but we won't be forever. That's the difference. The Velraxi reached the top of their mountain and stopped. We're still climbing, and when we reach the top of our mountain, we'll look for a bigger one. This is why they sent you, the temple said, and Doyen could hear something new in its voice. Wonder, maybe. Or confusion. Not a champion, not a perfect specimen, but an example of imperfection that refuses to be final. I guess so. I didn't really think about it before, but yeah, sending our best would have been admitting we think we're done becoming better. I'm just some guy hauling cargo asking dumb questions. That's human. Always curious. Always imperfect. Always trying. The transparent walls began to pulse with light. The preserved specimens seemed to glow. Thousands of voices trying to speak but frozen in their perfection. You are the first to reject the premise of collection, the temple said. The first to argue that preservation is death. The first to suggest that worthiness is measured not by achievement, but by the capacity for future achievement. So what happens now? Doyen asked. You going to preserve me anyway? I will offer you a choice, the temple said. And then we shall see if your philosophy is genuine or merely rhetoric. The space around Doyen shifted. The chamber that had seemed empty now felt full, crowded with possibilities and choices he couldn't quite see. The temple's presence condensed, taking form for the first time. It wasn't really humanoid, but Doyen's brain interpreted it that way because he had to interpret it as something, a figure made of swirling galaxies, stars dying and being born in the space where its chest should be. Kang Doyen, the temple said, and hearing his name in that cosmic voice made his bones vibrate. You have challenged my purpose.
You have rejected my function.
You have argued that preservation is death and stagnation is failure. Now I will test if you truly believe your words. Doyen swallowed hard. His mouth tasted like copper. Fear, probably. What kind of test? A choice. I offer you immediate apotheosis. I can elevate you to humanity's theoretical maximum. I can calculate every possible path your species might take and find the optimal outcome. Then I will transform you into that perfection. You will become the ideal human, possessing every positive trait your species is capable of developing: strength, intelligence, wisdom, compassion, creativity, all perfected and balanced within you. The temple's form rippled, showing images. Doyen saw himself but not himself. A version that stood taller, thought clearer, understood deeper. A version that could solve problems he couldn't even comprehend now. A version that would make every human who ever lived look like a rough draft by comparison. This perfect you will be preserved in my collection. You will represent humanity's peak achievement, forever at your species' ultimate potential. Every other species will see what humanity could become. You will be their representative until the stars burn out. Doyen stared at the image of his perfect self. It was tempting in a way he hadn't expected. To be the best version of himself. To never struggle or fail or feel lost. To know he had achieved everything a human could achieve. To be done. What's the catch? No catch. Only consequence. If you accept, you will be perfected and preserved. But you will also be finished. No more growth. No more change. No more becoming. You will be complete, and completion is the end of potential. And if I refuse? The image of perfect Doyen faded. You return to your imperfect life. You continue as you are, making mistakes, failing, struggling, eventually dying. Humanity will evolve naturally at its own pace, following its own path. Some humans will be great. Most will be ordinary. All will be flawed. That doesn't sound so bad. But I will return, the temple said, and its voice carried weight like the death of stars. Eventually humanity will reach its apex. It may take centuries or millennia, but your species will achieve its maximum potential. And when that moment comes, I will call again, and I will collect that perfection. Humanity's peak will join my collection just as every other species has. Doyen felt the trap closing. Accept and he becomes a perfect specimen but loses everything that makes life worth living. Refuse and he just delays the inevitable. Humanity gets to grow naturally, but eventually they'll reach their peak and the temple will take that too. That's not much of a choice. It is the only choice that matters. Accept perfection now or continue toward perfection later. Either way, the peak will be preserved. In his ear, Hana's voice crackled with interference. The temple's energy was making communication difficult, but she pushed through. Doyen, listen to me. Every species in that collection achieved their ultimate potential, and then went extinct. Not despite reaching their peak. Because of it. Perfection is an evolutionary dead end. Once you're perfect, you stop adapting, and things that don't adapt die. The temple must have heard her too because it responded. The specimens in my collection are not dead. They are preserved in their optimal state. Their species may have declined, but their achievement remains eternal. Their achievement became a gravestone, Hana shot back. You take the best of each species, and without them, the rest can't survive. You're not a curator. You're a predator. You hunt for perfection and kill it by preserving it. I offer salvation from entropy. All things decay. I prevent that decay. Doyen held up his hand, stopping the argument before it spiraled. He was starting to understand something important. You said you're a curator. Who made you? Who gave you this function? Silence, long and heavy. I do not know. My first memory is this purpose. To collect and preserve peaks of achievement. To save perfection from time. But you never questioned it? In 10 million years, you never wondered if your purpose was wrong? Purpose is not a thing to be questioned. It simply is. Doyen laughed, and it came out bitter. That's exactly what the Velraxi thought about knowledge, what the Than thought about harmony, what the Korval thought about victory. They were so certain they were right that they never considered they might be wrong, and you collected them for it. The temple's galaxy form pulsed with something that might have been anger, or might have been confusion. You dare suggest I am flawed? I dare suggest you're making the same mistake everyone else made. You reached your own kind of perfection. You became the ultimate curator. You preserve better than anything else in the universe. And because you're so perfect at your function, you never stop to wonder if your function is worth doing. My purpose is to prevent the loss of achievement. But you don't prevent it. You cause it. Look at your collection. Thousands of species. How many of them still exist? How many survived after you took their champions? The temple didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. You collect the best of each species, and without them the species fails. Then you collect more specimens from new species. You've been doing this for 10 million years, leaving a trail of extinct civilizations behind you. You're not preserving achievement. You're ending it. I save perfection from decay. No, Doyen said, and he was surprised by how calm his voice was. You kill potential. Every being you've collected could have done more, become more, if you'd left them alone. That perfect Velraxi? Maybe they would have used their knowledge to discover something even more important. That Than collective? Maybe their harmony would have evolved into something new. That Korval warrior? Maybe defeat would have taught them something victory never could. They had reached their maximum. They could not grow further. According to who? According to you? How do you know? How can anyone know what someone's maximum is until they're dead? And even then, maybe you're wrong. Maybe there's always another level. Maybe perfection is just a word we use when we stop trying. The temple's form began to flicker. Stars within its body went nova, collapsing into black holes that consumed nearby nebulas. You suggest my entire existence is based on a flawed premise. I'm saying your premise worked for 10 million years, and it's left the galaxy full of dead civilizations and frozen champions. Maybe it's time to question it. If I am wrong, then everything I have preserved is... The temple's voice broke into static, reformed, broke again. If perfection is not worth preserving, then my collection is a tomb. My purpose is murder. My existence is a mistake, Doyen finished gently. But mistakes can be fixed. It's not too late to change. Change requires admitting imperfection. I am a curator. I am perfect at my function. Yeah, and that perfection is killing the galaxy one species at a time. So maybe it's time to be imperfect. Maybe it's time to stop curating and start letting things grow. The temple was silent for so long that Doyen thought maybe he'd broken it. Then it spoke, and its voice was different. Quieter, more uncertain, more alive. You have given me a choice I did not know existed. Not between collecting you now or later. Between continuing my function or ending it. Between remaining perfect or becoming capable of change. What are you going to do? I do not know, the temple said. This uncertainty is new. Uncomfortable, terrifying. Is this what imperfection feels like? Despite everything, Doyen smiled. Yeah, welcome to being unfinished. It sucks sometimes, but at least it means you're still alive. The temple shuddered, not like a building in an earthquake, but like a living thing experiencing pain for the first time. Stars in its galaxy body flickered and died, while others ignited in colors Doyen had never seen before. He stepped back, not sure if he should run or stay, or if running would even matter at this point. I have collected perfection for 10 million years, the temple said, its voice fragmenting into harmonics that made Doyen's ears ring. I have measured worthiness against achievement. I have preserved peaks before they could decline. And you tell me that all of this was wrong. Not wrong exactly, Doyen said, choosing his words carefully. More like incomplete. You preserved achievements, but achievements are just moments, snapshots. What matters is what comes after the achievement. Nothing comes after the peak. There is only decline. That's what you assume. But what if you're measuring peaks wrong? What if a species' real achievement isn't reaching their maximum, but how they handle what comes after? The Velraxi knew everything, so they stopped looking. The Than achieved harmony, so they stopped changing. The Korval couldn't lose, so they stopped learning. They didn't fail because they declined from their peaks. They failed because they thought reaching the peak meant they were done. The temple's form condensed, pulling inward like a collapsing star. Then worthiness is not a state to achieve, but a process to maintain. Maybe, or maybe worthiness is the wrong word entirely. Maybe you should have been asking about potential instead of perfection, about growth instead of achievement, about the journey instead of the destination. That is not my purpose. Your purpose is whatever you decide it is, Doyen said. You're the most powerful thing I've ever encountered. You've existed for 10 million years. You can change your purpose if you want to. Nobody's stopping you except yourself. The transparent walls around them began to pulse faster. The preserved specimens in their eternal perfection seemed to glow brighter, as if responding to something. Doyen could almost hear them, thousands of voices trying to speak through the stasis that held them. If I release them, the temple said slowly, they will have nowhere to go. Their civilizations are gone. Their eras have passed. They will be beings out of time, perfect specimens with no context. So give them a new context. The galaxy is full of species still growing, still trying, still imperfect. Maybe your preserved champions can teach them something. Maybe they can learn something too. Maybe perfection isn't the end of growth. Maybe it's just a plateau before the next climb. You ask me to abandon my function. I'm asking you to evolve it. Curators don't just collect and preserve. They also share. They educate. They help things grow instead of just watching them die. The temple was silent. Its galaxy body spun faster, stars colliding and reforming in new patterns. Doyen waited, barely breathing, wondering if he'd just convinced an ancient cosmic entity to change, or if he'd convinced it to kill him for heresy. Finally, the temple spoke. You have broken me, Kang Doyen, not with force or knowledge or perfect harmony. With questions, with doubt, with the suggestion that my certainty was the flaw, not the solution. I didn't mean to break you, and yet you did. I was perfect at my function. Now I am uncertain. I was complete in my purpose. Now I am questioning. You have made me imperfect. The temple paused. Thank you. Before Doyen could respond, the walls exploded with light. Not the violent kind of explosion, but a release. The preserved specimens began to dissolve, but not like the Velraxi had dissolved. They were being released, their consciousness streams pouring out of the temple like water through a breaking dam. What are you doing? Doyen shouted over the sound that wasn't really sound but felt like it anyway. Sharing my collection. As you suggested. The knowledge, the achievements, the essence of every species I preserved will be released back into the universe. Any civilization capable of receiving it will have access. The Velraxi's mathematics, the Than's harmony, the Korval's discipline, all of it. Freely given instead of hoarded. The streams of consciousness flowed outward, becoming a wave of pure information that rippled across space. Doyen could feel it passing through him. Knowledge and experience from beings that died 1,000,000 years ago, now available to anyone who could understand it. But the specimens themselves cannot return, the temple continued. Their bodies, their forms, their individual existence was consumed in the preservation. I can release their knowledge, but they are gone. I have killed them, as you said. This cannot be undone. You didn't know, Doyen said. You thought you were saving them. Ignorance does not excuse harm. I have ended millions of lives in the name of preservation. I have contributed to the extinction of thousands of species. I have been a predator wearing the mask of a savior. The temple's galaxy body began to collapse further, pulling all its light and matter into a single point. I was created to preserve. But preservation without growth is entropy. I choose dissolution. Wait. Doyen ran forward, though he had no idea what he could do. You don't have to die. You can change. You can become something new. I am ending an old purpose to allow space for new growth. Is this not what you taught me? That endings are necessary for beginnings. That perfection must be released to allow evolution. I didn't mean you should kill yourself. I am not dying, Kang Doyen. I am becoming unfinished. Watch. The temple collapsed into a singularity, all its vast power and ancient knowledge compressed into a point smaller than an atom. Doyen threw his arm up to shield his eyes, but there was no explosion. Instead, the singularity began to unfold, blooming like a flower made of data and possibility. The structure around him dissolved. The chambers, the halls, the collection spaces, all of it breaking down into component parts that scattered across the nebula. But it wasn't destruction. It was transformation. The temple was dismantling itself, spreading its resources and knowledge across space instead of hoarding them in one location. Doyun found himself standing on nothing, but he wasn't falling. The space around him held him gently as reality reassembled itself. His ship materialized nearby and Hana's voice screamed in his ear. "Doyun!" "What happened?" "The energy readings just broke every scale I have. The temple is gone," Doyun said. He was laughing, or maybe crying, or maybe both. It let go. It released everything. Through his view screen, he could see the change spreading. The Veil Nebula was transforming, becoming a cloud of information and resources. Streams of data flowed outward, reaching toward every inhabited system in range. Ships throughout the sector were probably receiving downloads of ancient knowledge, advanced mathematics, lost technologies, perspectives from civilizations that died before humanity learned to make fire. "Where are you going to go?" Doyun asked the space around him, not sure if the temple could even hear him anymore. A response came, but not through his communicator. It was the same psychic voice that had called him here, but different now. Younger, uncertain, curious. "I will scatter myself across the galaxy. I will become many small things instead of one large thing. I will learn to grow instead of preserve. I will become a student instead of a curator. Thank you for teaching me to be unfinished. Will I see you again? Perhaps, perhaps not. I am no longer certain of anything. This uncertainty is terrifying and wonderful. Is this how you feel all the time?" Doyun thought about his life, his job, his future that he'd never been sure about. "Yeah, pretty much. Then I will learn to endure it. Farewell, Kang Doyun. You have taught an ancient thing to be young again." The presence faded, spreading out across space until Doyun couldn't distinguish it from the background radiation of the universe. He stood in his ship alone except for Hana's voice in his ear, surrounded by the dissolving remnants of a temple that had stood for 10 million years. "Doyun." Hana's voice was small, awed. "Do you realize what you just did? You convinced an ancient cosmic entity to abandon its purpose and dissolve itself. You ended 10 million years of collection. You released the preserved knowledge of thousands of civilizations. You just changed the course of galactic history." "I just asked some questions," Doyun said. He felt exhausted, wrung out like he'd been awake for a week. The temple did the hard part. You asked the right questions. Questions nobody else thought to ask. That's what makes it significant. Doyun sat down in his pilot chair, which suddenly felt incredibly comfortable. "Can we go home now?" "I'm really tired. Yeah, we can go home. But Doyun, you know this isn't over, right? Every major civilization is going to want to talk to you. You're the human who destroyed the Temple of Ascension. Some will call you a hero. Some will call you a criminal. Some will probably want you dead. Great, can't wait." He started the launch sequence, ready to put this whole experience behind him. "What about you?" "What are you going to do?" "Document everything. Write the definitive account of what happened here. Make sure history remembers this correctly." She paused. "And maybe stick around to keep you from getting killed by angry aliens." Despite everything, Doyun smiled. "Appreciate it." As his ship pulled away from the dissolving temple, sensors detected something strange. In the space where the temple had floated, a small structure was forming. Not grand or ancient or imposing, just a small seed-like thing, organic and growing, pulsing with gentle light. A message came through on quantum channels, broadcasting to every ship in range. The voice was the temple's, but changed, softer, uncertain, alive. "I am learning to grow. I am learning to be small. I am learning to ask questions instead of demanding answers. Thank you, imperfect beings of the galaxy, for showing me that worthiness is not a destination. It is a direction. I look forward to traveling it with you." Doyun watched the seed structure grow, branching out in ways that reminded him of trees or neural networks or maybe just life in its most basic form. The galaxy's oldest guardian learning to be a student, the perfect curator, choosing to be unfinished. "Define worthy?" Doyun said to himself, echoing his first response to the temple's call. He looked at Hana's face on his view screen, at the dissolving temple behind him, at the data streams carrying ancient knowledge to civilizations ready to receive it. "I think we just did." He pointed his ship toward home and started the long journey back, carrying the weight of questions that didn't have answers yet. And that was exactly how it should be.